Nokia had a foldable smartphone back in 2007, and it wasn't even their first one. When you think of foldable smartphones, the Samsung Galaxy Fold is probably the first device that pops into your head. But Nokia were experimenting with this form factor long before flexible displays were even a thing. And the Nokia E90 might just be the coolest one they made. I wanted one so badly, but this thing in 2007 used to cost close to $1,000 where I live. And so it remained a distant dream. Until today. So let's unbox it together and let me show you what it can do. This is the original box from the outside, but definitely not from the inside. Now in the box there is a headset, Nokia's charging brick, and a 1500 milliamps battery. Which, by the way, looks very small compared to the handset itself. It still looks really cool. This thing is a big, thick boy. Let's pop the battery in. And we're ready to go. Powering it on. I love the design language here, and it actually feels great in the hand. By the way, when it's folded, it's about 20 millimeters thick and it weighs about 210 grams. And for its time, that used to be enormous. Look at how small the N95 is in comparison, and this used to be Nokia's flagship at that time. And yet somehow, compared to a modern smartphone, it actually looks kind of small. You could get the E90 in brown, which Nokia called Mocha, or you could have gotten it in red, and later on it was even available in black. I think Mocha looks really elegant on this thing. Just like the Galaxy Fold, the E90 also has two displays. On the outside is a tiny 2-inch display with a 320 by 240 pixels resolution. And since the device is super tall, it has a very comfortable keypad and an excellent D-pad for navigation. In a funny way, it actually looks like a Nokia E51 surrounded by a huge casing. There are also nice metallic touches all over the front, and they look really classy with the combination of the mocha color. And the power button is located on the front in a pretty unconventional location. On the right, you've got a voice recorder button, an infrared port, and a camera shutter key, while the left is mostly clean with a metallic accent that shows off the hinges. The top is devoid of any ports, while the bottom houses a micro USB port, a headphone jack, and a charging port. Now the back is probably the busiest part of the E90's design, with rubber points located on all four corners so that the device can sit down on a table almost like a baby laptop. There's a 3.15 megapixel camera with LED flash, and they're both sitting flush alongside the back. Two backfiring speaker grills located near the top, and a memory card slot near the bottom. You can also access the removable back by pressing on this button and sliding downwards. The hinge mechanism to unfold the E90 is an engineering masterpiece for its time. It's incredibly satisfying to open and has two fixed positions. If you don't like either angles, it also locks the device at any angle you prefer, and it's very solid at doing its job. Unfolding the device also reveals its main centerpiece. A 4-inch display with an 800 by 352 pixels resolution. This was as good as it gets for a smartphone display in 2007, and it really shows. The display is flanked by shortcut keys on one side and call keys on the other, while the Nokia logo is proudly displayed at the top. Moving on to the lower part, this is where my heart skips a beat. This fully fledged QWERTY keyboard is magnificent. It's also huge, containing 5 full rows and shortcut keys above that. You've got a very comfortable D-pad on the right and almost every button you can think of here. And typing on the E90 is just extraordinary. The keys provide the perfect amount of tactile feedback, and they're also generously laid out. And even though you really can't use the E90's keyboard with one hand, why on earth would you even want to do that? Honestly, the keyboard alone makes me wish I could put my SIM card into this thing and use it as a daily driver. It's just a shame that there's no functioning WhatsApp port for this device. Unlike the previous communicators which were running on Symbian S80, the E90 is running on the more widely available Symbian S60 version 9.2 with a couple of extra special quirks. And the device was considered very smooth for its time, thanks to a 330 MHz processor and about 128 MB of RAM. This also made the multitasking experience on the E90 excellent. By using the outer display, you really wouldn't be able to tell any difference between this and any other Symbian-powered device. You've got your main home screen, which houses all your custom apps as well as all your notifications. And then there's the typical Symbian menu layout. But once you fold the E90 open, it reveals a world of possibilities. The very wide inner display is a beautiful canvas to show off your multitasking as well as pack a lot of information into one screen. And even though not every built-in app made full use of this wide display, your email client, messaging app, and even built-in office apps really made the device shine. And with all the shortcut keys and beautifully balanced keyboard, using the E90 is incredibly satisfying. The shortcut keys are also a key part of the E90 user experience, and you could even customize that last button so it accesses any app you want it to. They definitely weren't kidding about the productivity aspect, and made sure everything you'd need to get work done was quickly accessible and within reach. So what were the weaknesses of the Nokia E90? The first one is obviously the size and weight, as there was nothing as big as this for its time. But Nokia deserves some credit for making this device slightly smaller than its predecessor, the 9500. Battery life wasn't excellent on the E90 as the 1500 mAh battery was a bit too small for such a display size. The camera was also not the best that Nokia had at that time, but they wanted something that made the device flush from the back, so it kind of makes sense. For some reason, Nokia used the 2.5mm headphone jack standard, which was a dying standard at that point, so I don't know why they did that, but that affected the audio fidelity of this device. And the software experience wasn't as special as the S80 powered devices from the communicators past. However, using S60 also meant that there is a much bigger compatibility aspect with other Nokia devices. And the last point was obviously the price, as this thing was never supposed to be affordable, and it was actually considered one of the most expensive devices you could buy back in 2007. But hey, if you want something special, you always gotta pay for it, right? So let's conclude. Even though at a glance this might seem like the ancestor of the Galaxy Fold, in my opinion, it's actually closer to being the ancestor of the original Microsoft Surface Duo. Its strength lies in its multitasking abilities and with a huge focus on productivity as opposed to being an all-out multimedia device. Either way, this was one heck of a device despite its weaknesses. It's really a piece of geeky art from its design to its deliciously tactile keyboard. It's also a device that you used to aspire to own, whether you were into productivity or not, because it represented the very cutting edge of what we can do with technology. Unfortunately, I almost never get this feeling these days from any phone, and maybe it's just because I'm getting old. And yes, I know the N95 was a better all-rounder than this. However, in my opinion, the E90 is just infinitely more cool. Later on, this same form factor kind of evolved into what became the Nokia N97 and later the Nokia E7. However, I feel like both of these devices failed to capture the same magic that communicators of old had. Anyway, what do you think of the Nokia E90? Did you own it or have you tried it somewhere? Please share your experiences with me in the comments below. If you love QWERTY keyboards on phones, check out my Nokia N97 nostalgia video. And if you're into QWERTY, check out why I think the Nokia N900 was an awesome phone. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one.